Hi everyone, the book I'm reviewing today is Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. Ray, thank you so much for recommending this book. I absolutely enjoyed this and it's on my top 10 must read in your lifetime books. It was such a lovely book about hope, about finding meaning, even in situations where you feel, there's nothing. This book really is fantastic. It shows us the true strength of our human nature. So I definitely recommend it. For those in South Africa, I purchased mine from Take a Lot, and I think they have a sale right now, so you can actually purchase it from Take a Lot online. Okay, I'm going to read some extracts for you, and if you've read the book, please do let me know what you think of it. His experience in Auschwitz, terrible as it was, reinforced what was already one of his key ideas. Life is not primarily a quest for pleasure, as Freud believed, or a quest for power, as Alfred Adler taught, but a quest for meaning. The great task for any person is to find meaning in his or her life. Franklin saw three possible sources for meaning: in work, doing something significant; in love, caring for another person, as Franklin held on to the image of his wife through the darkest days in Auschwitz; and in courage in difficult times. Suffering in and of itself is meaningless. We give our suffering meaning by the way in which we respond to it. But even one such example is sufficient proof that man's inner strength may raise him above his outward fate. Forces beyond your control can take away everything you possess except one thing: your freedom to choose how you will respond to the situation. You cannot control what happens to you in life, but you can always control what you feel and do about what happens to you. We are never left with nothing as long as we retain the freedom to choose how we will respond. I have known successful businessmen who, upon retirement, lost all zest for life. Their work had given their lives meaning. Often it was the only thing that gave their lives meaning, and without it, they spent day after day sitting at home depressed with nothing to do. I have known people who rose to the challenge of enduring the most terrible afflictions and situations as long as they believed there was a point to their suffering. Whether it was a family milestone they wanted to live long enough to share, or the prospect of doctors finding a cure by studying their affliction, having a why to live for enabled them to bear the how. Franklin's doctrine of logotherapy, curing the soul by leading it to find meaning in life, gains credibility against the background of his anguish in Auschwitz. We have come to recognize that this is a profoundly religious book. It insists that life is meaningful and that we must learn to see life as meaningful despite our circumstances. It emphasizes that there is an ultimate purpose to life. I do not at all see in the bestseller status of my book an achievement, an accomplishment on my part, but rather an expression of the misery of our time. If hundreds of thousands of people reach out to a book whose very title promises to deal with the question of meaning to life, it must be a question that burns under their fingernails. I had wanted simply to convey to the reader, by way of a concrete example, that life holds a potential meaning under any condition, even the most miserable ones. Don't aim at success. The more you aim at it and make it a target, the more you are going to miss it. For success, like happiness, cannot be pursued. It must ensue, and it only does so as the unintended side effect of one's dedication to a cause greater than oneself, or as the byproduct of one's surrender to a person other than oneself. Happiness must happen, and the same holds for success. You have to let it happen by not caring about it. I want you to listen to what your conscience commands you to do and go on to carry it out to the best of your knowledge. But they offer sufficient proof that everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstance, to choose one's own way, and there were always choices to make. Seen from this point of view, the mental reactions of the inmates of a concentration camp must seem more to us than the mere expression of certain physical and sociological conditions. Even though conditions such as lack of sleep, insufficient food, and various mental stresses may suggest that the inmates were bound to react in certain ways, in the final analysis it became clear that the sort of person the prisoner became was the result of an inner decision and not the result of camp influences alone. Fundamentally, therefore, any man can, even under such circumstances, decide what shall become of him. Mentally and spiritually, he may retain his human dignity even in a concentration camp. It is this spiritual freedom, which cannot be taken away, that makes life meaningful and purposeful. It is a peculiarity of man that he can only live by looking to the future, and this is his salvation in the most difficult moments of his existence, although he sometimes has to force his mind to task. I remember a personal experience. Almost in tears from pain, I had terrible sores on my feet from wearing torn shoes. I limped a few kilometers with our long column of men from the camp to our work site. Very cold, bitter winds struck us. I kept thinking of the endless little problems of our miserable life. What would there be to eat tonight? If a piece of sausage came as extra ration, should I exchange it for a piece of bread? Should I trade my last cigarette, which was left from a bonus I received a fortnight ago, for a bowl of soup? How could I get a piece of wire to replace the fragment which served as one of my shoelaces? Would I get to our work site in time to join my usual working party, or would I have to join another, which might have a brutal foreman? What could I do to get on good terms with the capo who would help me to obtain work in a camp instead of undertaking this horribly long daily march? I became disgusted with the state of affairs which compelled me, daily, hourly, to think of only such trivial things. I forced my thoughts to turn to another subject. Suddenly, I saw myself standing on the platform of a well-lit, warm and pleasant lecture room. In front of me sat an attentive audience on comfortable upholstered seats. I was giving a lecture on the psychology of the concentration camp. All that oppressed me at the moment became objective, seen and described from the remote viewpoint of science. By this method, I succeeded somehow in rising above the situation, above the sufferings of the moment, and I observed them as if they were already of the past. Both I and my troubles became the object of an interesting psycho-scientific study undertaken by myself. What does Spinoza say in ethics? Emotion, which is suffering, ceases to be suffering as soon as we form a clear and precise picture of it. From all this, we may learn that there are two races of men in the world, but only these two, the race of the decent man and the race of the indecent man. Both are found everywhere. They penetrate into all groups of society. No group consists entirely of decent or indecent people. In this sense, no group is of pure race, and therefore one occasionally found a decent fellow among the camp guards. Life in a concentration camp tore open the human soul and exposed its depths. It is surprising that in those depths we again found only human qualities which in their very nature were a mixture of good and evil. The rift dividing good from evil, which goes through all human beings, reaches into the lowest depths and becomes apparent even on the bottom of the abyss which is laid open by the concentration camp. An American woman once confronted me with a reproach. How can you still write some of your books in German, Adolf Hitler's language? In response, I asked her if she had knives in her kitchen, and when she answered that she did, I acted dismayed and shocked, exclaiming, "How can you still use knives after so many killers have used them to stab and murder their victims?" She stopped objecting to my writing books in German. I hope you enjoyed it. Drop me a comment if you've read it and let me know what you're reading now as well. Thank you.